This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, it's 3 o'clock and we'll open the meeting of the Gateway Board of Supervisors, June 18th, 3 o'clock p.m. And we'll go ahead and open the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with
Now I'll go ahead and call the roll. Supervisor Flaherty?
Here.
Supervisor Guy? Here. He's here. Supervisor Banks?
Here.
Here. Supervisor Feinberg?
here.
And Supervisor Tinkle?
Here.
All are in attendance.
Madam Chair, if I may, for a moment, for the record, there are two board members physically present, Supervisor Flaherty, Supervisor Tinkle, two board members present remotely, Supervisor Guy and Chairman Feinberg. And this, Supervisor Banks also.
Yes.
And just for the record, the governor's order, which was Governor's Executive Order 20-69, is the one that allowed local governments to conduct meetings remotely, to establish the quorum remotely under the COVID state of emergency. By virtue of Governor's Executive Order 20-139, that initial one has been extended to June 30th, 2020. I don't know, Chris and the chair advised if the original 20-69 gets extended further or if it does not. If it does not get extended further, then we have to go back to having a physical quorum established. But I'll keep track of that. There's a local government listserv of attorneys that keep each other apprised of that.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Tony. And we will start the meeting and see if we have any audience or public comments. I have not received any slips for sign in for comments yet. Is there anyone that wishes to address the board regarding agenda items or non-agenda items? Need to get a slip on it.
Yeah.
Okay, we do have, looks like Avery.
Chris, while we're waiting for that, I just want to remind everybody that is there, if you have a cell phone, to please turn it to silent so we don't have phones ringing. Thank you.
Chris?
Yes.
Hello?
Chris, could you get the ones that are online on our computer so we can see who's with us? Possibility?
Well, just a minute.
Thank you.
If you have them on there, you have to shift it back and forth every time. You could readjust the camera.
Just so I can see who's talking.
Okay, sure. We have Avery Deming on Ashbrook,
Yes.
and he would like to talk about littorals. Go ahead, Mr.
Well, thank
Deming.
you. It's been a while, folks, since I've been around. Either hospitalization, the wife hospitalization, COVID, you name it, but I'm back. So anyway, yes, the littoral problem still exists. Just want to express the fact that I'm not going away on this issue. HP enjoys littorals. It adds to the character of Hampton Park. And I can prove by a survey, 95% of the homeowners enjoy their littorals also. It is attractive, even though the word attractive does not appear in the county code. Isn't that interesting, of course? The fact is, littorals increase sales value of our homes by over $10,000 each. Isn't that interesting? Nobody says that either in public, but all your realtors will tell you that fact. So there are benefits too. 1 second, let me pass these out. May I?
I'll take them off.
I only get 3 minutes, don't I?
5 minutes.
5 minutes, great. I'm going to need it. Thank you, sir. Yes. First page is the benefits of littorals. You've seen this before, but maybe you need a refresher. We need littorals because of these factors. 25% coverage of the bank of littorals, you can hardly keep your water clean. And anyway, 100% will keep it cleaner. They prevent erosions. What is 25% of bank coverage of littorals do to bank erosion for the other 75%? And I can go on the rest of them. I'll let you read them all. And what's not on here, of course, is the people that are in favor of this, and the home resale value should be number 6 and 7 for you. I just checked that survey I did was 70 homeowners, and out of 374 homes that have a lanai view of the lake, 20% survey of those homeowners. I spent 15 to 20 minutes with each one explaining the benefits. They never knew the benefits of these. They just knew the attractiveness of the littoral. I wish I had them for you folks, but I don't. So, Tony, a couple questions for you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes. Remember the demand letter from Justin's lawyer
Yes.
a while back? Yes. What advice did you give the board in regard to that demand letter? Do you remember?
I can't recall. I did not respond to the demand letter. I thought it was.
It was regarding removal of littorals in regard to equal the DO that had certain sections with no littorals.
I recall the letter, and I recall the numerous errors and
Yes.
mistakes. I did not respond.
Did not respond to them. How about advice to the board on actions taken?
I can't recall. It was about 1
Oh, yeah, it was. Chris, do you remember, was there any advice from council on that?
No, we just didn't respond to the letter.
You did take action, did you? In other words, you removed the littorals as per requested. Okay, so no action, no advice from council on that demand.
My advice was I wasn't going to respond because it was riddled with errors and mistakes.
Okay, well, what the demand letter said was you're either going to remove the littorals or we're going to sue. So we removed the littorals, did we not?
We did. It had
We
nothing
did.
to do with the demand letter.
Had nothing to do with the demand letter. Okay, I'm learning this stuff because I didn't see it. I didn't sit in on it. The actions, I didn't advise my thoughts. Okay, so number 2, Tony, do you know about the DO, which is the development orders, and the status of those? They require 25% circumference of littorals. Are you aware of that fact, or is this something that you learned, or?
I'm aware that some ponds have littoral requirements in their DO, some do not. I can't tell you specifics as to lake or pond or DO number or community.
It's typically 25%. That's part of the code 10418. So on a legal sense, we have to meet the DO. The county has to meet the DO. I mean, the developer has to meet the DO requirement. Plus, there's a thing called substantial compliance. Are you familiar with that term, substantial compliance?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so.
Madam Chair, you can just from matter of protocol.
Yeah.
If the chair doesn't have any difficulty with me responding directly to Mr. Deming, that's typically not. Typically, the questions are directed to the board, and the board directs the staff to respond. I'm fine with that. That's the chair's okay with it.
Yeah, and if the board has a question, please raise your, let me know if you have a question about what I'm speaking of. I'm trying to get some answers to questions on my mind about this.
Mr. Deming, unless the chair wants to extend your time, your 5 minutes is up, and this may be more appropriate discussion for the littoral workshop coming up July 2nd.
Well, can I address that?
Well, it depends. Madam Chair, do you have any objection to Mr. Deming continuing?
What I'd like to do is if he has questions, he should forward those to you in the form of an email so that you can decide how best they should be answered. We do have a workshop coming up, and I think that would be the appropriate time for any additional conversation on littorals.
Well, may I address that, some of this is legal and not part of pond standards.
And again, I'll just repeat, Avery, excuse me, I'll just repeat that these legal questions that you're bringing up, I think that those should be forwarded to Mr. Shoemaker in the form of an email. I think that would be more appropriate than this setting.
Yes, I can do
I'm
that.
sure you're correct, because the board at the workshop can discuss all aspects of the littoral. The practical aspects, development order aspects, legal aspects, operation aspects. That's well within the realm of the board.
Well, the problem is, I've addressed this to the county with no answer. I've addressed this to a couple other people. Nobody wants to address it. I'm talking about the second, third level of up from the inspectors. And the question is really, the bottom line is a certification of compliance the end all? In other words, can you include things in the certification of compliance that are not in the DO and make it legal because you guys have accepted that certification of compliance as it is? That's the question. And I will address that question by email as is recommended by the president.
Okay, well, thank you. Appreciate it.
Question?
Avery, do you have a copy of what is going to be presented as the, I guess, proposed stormwater pond plan?
I have a copy, yes. I've seen it, and it has issues in it reflected in my questions here.
The other one is the issue of, I believe it's probably for you, the issue of the development order and amendment thereof. If there is an issue of a development order, I would think that that would be pertinent to the community that is involved in the development order and not the CDD. We don't amend development.
Except to the extent that my understanding is how the county treats it, if you are the owner or operator of one management system.
So we
If you are the
can
owner,
amend it to the extent of that involvement.
if you own that pond, the lake, the region, and the system, yes.
Yeah, that, by the way,
That's what they look to for enforcement action, is generally the owner or the operating. So it all depends.
And we are on to discuss this at the next meeting.
by the way, that amendment order he's referring to is in the packet that I gave you, page 2. That's printed right out of 10109 county. And I believe you have that opportunity to amend our DO from 25% littorals to 100%, which is the way they are, on something like this document.
And then the last question I have, Avery, you indicated that a study, I don't know where it came from, that the property value in HP is increased by $10,000 per lot.
Right.
Based on this. Where did that come from?
Local realtors who sell
Who's
property.
that?
Yes. Geez, the names. I can get you names, okay? Yes, a couple. Okay, anything
I've got
else?
2 realtors that say it decreases the value by that.
Not from what I've seen, sir.
That's what I want to find out who. Okay, that's all.
Any other questions? Thank you, Avery. We'll move on to the next agenda item, which is consideration of approval of the 2019 financial audit. And we have in attendance today Jay Gaines, representing the firm. Mr. Gaines, welcome.
Good afternoon, everyone. Steve, do you have my PowerPoint?
We got to add the next one.
I will, yeah, I'm trying to get him just off by himself.
We asked whether or not we have this policy.
PowerPoint.
I don't,
I forwarded it earlier this week.
Yes, what I just said, it should be here. Do you have a PowerPoint? I don't know.
I don't have a PowerPoint.
Let me check and see if Steve emailed one. That's it. Under the agenda.
Under here?
Yeah, it's right down. So. Right there.
Okay.
All right, well,
Yeah,
that's a copy of our report, but that's not a copy of my PowerPoint presentation.
excuse me, that was part of the agreement. Even Stephen Bloom said there's supposed to be a PowerPoint with your presentation.
I
mean, that was in the contract.
I understand. I forwarded it to Stephen Bloom earlier this week.
Yep. Hi, Jay. This is Steven. Can you send it again? I do not see any attachments.
Okay, hang on.
Yeah, if he wants to copy me on the thumb drive.
Maybe that's the one that was undeliverable.
While they're trying to bring up the PowerPoint presentation, any of the supervisors have a disagreement for us to go ahead and approve the consent agenda, the minutes from 2 previous meetings?
I don't.
Yeah, she wants to know if we want to. Is it okay if Margaret, if I repeat what you said?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. Wants to know if we had any objections to approving the consent agenda while we're waiting for the PowerPoint. And Mr. Tingle shook his head no.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
I guess I'll second it because I'm here.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. And we'll go for the vote. Supervisor Flaherty,
Yes.
Supervisor Guy,
Yes.
Supervisor Banks,
Yes.
Supervisor Feinberg,
Yes.
Supervisor Tinkle.
Yes.
Okay. Motion was approved to approve the consent agenda. And while we're waiting, we could move on to the action items, or we could move on to the district engineer. I don't see Danny online.
Yeah, we need
I'm on the phone.
She's on the
All
phone.
these people are hiding in the street.
Yeah.
He's tucked away in the corner.
Could you put put your camera on, Mr. Nelson, so I can see you? So when I
Well, you
talk
can't.
to ask questions, I like to know who I'm talking to.
The answer for that. Why?
That would be impossible because I'm on the phone, not on the computer.
I just want to look at you when I'm asking my questions.
I am a good-looking feller, but just look right at the screen. And
I think we have a bad connection. Some guy said that Danny Nelson's a good-looking fellow.
yeah, we don't.
Yeah.
There doesn't have to be emotion on that.
So.
Well, I can be fairly brief with mine. There are 2 items on there, and apologize if there's background because I'm driving. But so there's annually we do for your bonds, which what we have, you have the 2014-2, which is for the meters, and then you have the 2013. Which is the refinancing bonds for Pelican, which I believe this will be the last year of that. But those, they're required to annually basically give a statement about the condition of the facilities and that sort of thing, and it's due in July. So in the past, we haven't brought these before the board. We've simply just prepared them and submitted them financially. And Chris felt it was a good idea, and I agreed to get those in front of the board just for, I don't think there's a motion required, but just for your information. If you have any comments or anything you see needs clarification or modification, then we can certainly do that. But those are just simply for your information otherwise.
Any questions, Mrs. Flaherty?
I have lots of questions for Mr. Nelson today, but it has nothing to do with those two things. I can wait till supervisor comments, or I can start asking him now. It's your choice.
My suggestion is I would ask them now because no guarantee that I'll still be on the phone by the time you get to supervisor comments.
Okay, all right. And when the lake banks are worked on, you have a supervisor there, am I correct? To watch over what is being done by the company? I know
We have,
inspector, okay.
Yeah.
Inspector, I would call him
Right.
an over, but inspector sounds good. Okay, so I'm gonna go with, I'll start with Devonshire. The lady came in and was complaining about her lakes. I did go out there and it looks like a roller coaster where the rocks are. Instead of being, I'm a teacher, I don't have a blackboard. Instead of being in a line like it's supposed to be, it goes up and down. That to me, why would that be acceptable by the inspector? Is that the correct person who looks over at the work? Okay, and I'm just a little bit concerned about that. So I'll go to the next one, Magnolia Lakes. I know we have another change order, okay, and we're gonna put something down, and yet we have a lot of runaway. A lot of stuff underneath these pads have just gone drifting away, and nothing is being done. And this was like this before the company left. So I want to know when, when, a date, what's going to be done to correct this situation. And when it is corrected, that's when the guarantee should begin. Because it was like that before they left, okay? And now it's just getting worse. And we're going to have the rainy season and it's just going to disappear, the soil underneath. And I'm wondering if they did it correctly. Did they push the soil down before they did it? And since I'm not an engineer, so I can't go inspect it that way, but I would have, all the work I ever see is that you roll everything before you put anything down, and it doesn't look like it was rolled if we're having all these little concave areas where the sand underneath has disappeared. So, and then there's a pipe there that rocks are falling into it, so it's going to end up being blocked. And see, I can't see you, so I use my hands a lot, so you can't see me using my hands. Then there's the drains they moved. The drains are 2 inches to maybe even a little higher than the grass. So how is the water going to go into the drains? If it's higher, you're going to have a lot of puddling there. So I'm wondering where the inspectors were when all this was going on. Sorry, Mr. Nelson.
Well, I mean, you've got me at a disadvantage because you're saying a lot of stuff, and I'm not really sure exactly what you're talking about. I'd be more than happy to go out there with the inspector and you and staff if that's what you'd like. But I do know there are a variety of issues, and some of those are not related to the construction of the lakes. I'm not really sure what you're meaning by the roller coaster without seeing it, firsthand. But I mean, it's not uncommon. We've done several of these lake banks. Several of them have had issues at construction that are exposed by the initial rains that have to be repaired. So that's not uncommon to see that. And as I know, the ones that have been repaired in the past have all been fine. So, and just because an inspector is there, keep in mind there's one inspector and 2 to 3 lakes that are being worked on at a single time. So the fact that he's there, he may not be right there where work is being done at a particular time. So just keep that in mind. But be more than happy to go out there, just name a time and we'll go out there and take a look at it. But there's a lot more information than you and I have on some of the history and background and, who's responsible for what as far as contractor work.
All right, any day next week, except Thursday, I'm available to go out with you.
Okay. Okay.
And I know
All
that
right.
all
Any day.
this occurred before they even left Magnolia Lakes. And also, they were supposed to fix someone's yard, and you should see what the yard looks like. The grass it's just, I mean, how can you be accountable for your work? It's just not acceptable.
What are you talking about?
Understand.
Magnolia Lakes.
Where they staged the construction?
Yeah.
I saw that when it was done, and it was, in my opinion, totally acceptable. What I did see was that the property owner overwatered the new grass, and it was a swamp where I walked on. But there's an issue that you need to be aware of in the construction industry. And Danny, jump in and correct me. When you do a construction project, and the project is what the contractor determines to be substantially complete, the normal procedure is you prepare a punch list of items that are defects. And the contractor has a set time to get that list of errors, mistakes, whatever, corrected. Usually a value of money equal to 200% of the value of the work to correct the problem is retained from the contractor until he gets all that done. Once that punch list is established, that establishes then into a warranty period. So if anything comes up that was not on that punch list, it becomes a warranty issue. When it's a warranty issue, the question is here, and some guidance from maybe Chris, is do we retain the engineer to prepare warranty claims, or do we do it with staff? I don't know the answer to that question. Does staff do warranty, or does the engineer?
The engineer would have, after the punch list items are complete, we would filter that through him, but on the warranty items on that, we would filter it through Tech Check to make them aware, but we would convey those items directly to Metro.
Okay, and then typically when you do warranty items, there's degrees of problem associated with one. If it's a significant erosion, like I think I brought up after going to 83 a couple of weeks ago, there's areas, I'm gonna say 5 or 6 around the lake that, in my opinion, need to be done quickly because they're only gonna get worse. There are other issues that you might have that, he could have 30 days, 60 days to fix it. It's what you tell him in the warranty letter that addresses the issue, and the time you get it. Then the last one is relative to the boxes. Those boxes are not meant to be necessarily a drain into their bubble ups. They're for the roof drains coming down, or the vehicles coming down, the water will bubble up and go out and then disperse across the grass and into the flowway or into the pond, so as not to create a rut of just a constant stream of water. So those being at an inch or two above grade is not the end of the world.
But if they are ruts,
Ed, and to add,
If there's ruts.
to add on to that,
Taken care of, but I don't know what caused that. But anyway, I think the big one is that punch lists need to be done. I'm going to myself go out to Devonshire, because I came up to the last meeting, I just glad and see what they're talking about. My pond, which is the oldest one in Gateway that has been done, has a little waviness. You're going to get that. That's all there is to it. There's no way to stop that.
Ed, I think Danny wanted to jump in here and make a comment.
Go ahead, Danny.
well, I did want to just say too that that I know it in particular as it relates to Lake 83, there were some other issues unrelated to the contractor. I think some ruts that were caused by some other delivery or something that wasn't related to the contractor. So we do have some other. So when you're seeing it, and if it's specifically associated with the lake and at the lake, yes, that's most likely the contractor in this. But there are some, as I understood, and I haven't been out there to personally see it. I think others have. But just realize there may be some work that may appear to be associated with the lake that may not be. So just keep that in mind. And like Ed was saying, I mean, this is Florida. These are man-made lakes. Nature does take its course. This erosion control is meant to do that. It's meant to help control the erosion. But there is no perfect system unless you want to create a cement pond. There is no perfect solution. But I think the work that has been done, the direction the board's given, and what has taken place has been a major improvement in work that you had to do based on the condition that these lakes were in. So I think the program is being successful. It's good that these lakes are being completed at the rainy season so that we can see what issues are up front while we still have the contractors around and the issues can be addressed. But I'll look at my calendar. I'll get with our inspector as well and see if we can arrange a time. And if Chris can have somebody meet us out there, we can certainly walk the lakes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nelson. Thank you, Mrs. Feinberg.
Okay, are we ready to, anything else, Danny? I guess I should ask that before we move back to the audit.
Yeah.
May I ask Danny a question?
Certainly.
Yes.
Danny, I noticed that you're making comments about the conditions being in good repair, et cetera, which is necessary under the covenants of the master trust indenture. And I understand that it's very important that this that items be kept in good repair under those conditions. However, we all know that the items that you've attested to on these 3 letters all have had difficulties in the last few years. And so what I'm wondering is, did you have to hold your nose in order to sign this thing, or are you really comfortable with the way this letter is worded, or are we going to get surprises in subsequent years?
No, I mean, these are pretty typical of what we've seen. And the good thing is we've all seen the condition that they're in. We know, as it specifically relates to the lakes, tremendous amount of money and work has been done over the last few years, to help correct the problem. So I feel comfortable with that. The meters are a completely different situation, obviously. It's, somebody's got an extra speaker on, but a lot of echo. So the meters are a different situation, which, I think a lot of progress has been made on those since you started, and it continues to be something that is looked at. And I feel comfortable with the way that it's worded. Obviously, the wording has to be such that it truly matches what efforts you're doing. So, as we work towards next year, there obviously will be some more improvements and some more changes on both of these items.
Thank you.
I do have one other item, unless somebody else has questions on these, that it's a non-agenda item, but I feel I needed to bring it up. We talked about it at the last meeting, and that was I believe it may come up today. I'm not sure, so I can hold off if you want, but the bids for the roundabout improvements at Commerce, those came in on June 5th. Chris had talked about the utility component price, which is around $750,000, I believe. I just want to update the board on where we have been since then, and if that's appropriate, I can do that now. So I'll move forward unless
yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so
Sure. Danny may ask for, or Chris ask for board confirmation or approval of the proposal that's been submitted to Lee County, that Lee County believes is the recommended.
I'm giving an up. I just want to give an update only, and I'm not asking for approval or anything. So it's just an update on where it stands. So, well, essentially, if that's, say again.
Are you okay with that, Tony, for him to just give an update?
Yes, I mean, the county wants the district's blessing, so whether it's at the management level or the board level, it doesn't matter.
It's not on the agenda, the board.
Right, but it can be added if the board wishes to. Maybe Danny do his presentation and the board can decide how I wish to handle it.
Yeah, let Dan go ahead. I want to hear this because I've got a question.
Okay, y'all okay with me proceeding then?
Yes.
Just one
Okay.
second. You talk a little louder. Thank you.
So the bids were June 5th. We were provided the bids after that, along with references. The references that came were for the the low bidders, apparent low bidders, prime only. So, which was for the roadway work. A sub was proposed for the underground utility work. So we requested references for the underground utility contractor, who was a firm or a contractor that we were not familiar with, which is fine. We received that information this morning at just before 8 o'clock. They provided, I think, 3 references. We made calls to those, and the information on those references were that that contractor did not perform the work for the references that were provided. They were merely a contractor that then subbed that work out. So we've since asked Lee County if they can provide information on who will truly be doing the underground work so we can actually make a positive recommendation to the board. So as it sits right now, they're working on that. We cannot make a recommendation. I just wanted to bring this up because they're, they're anticipating moving forward with this fairly rapidly, as I understand. I believe that might be discussed, that might be brought up today later under maybe even supervisor comments. But as it sits right now, I cannot make a recommendation for the underground work that would be the portion attributed to Gateway. But as I understand, the county is anxious to move forward with the apparent low bidder. So that's basically the update.
Thank you for the
Can I ask
update.
you a question on that?
Sure.
I thought Mr. Bryant.
Madam Chairman,
Go ahead, Mr. Guy.
thank you. Danny, did you have an opportunity to read the letter that the chairman signed going to Commissioner Cecil Pendergrass that was authored by Supervisor Tinkle and Mr. Senior?
I don't believe I read it personally, but I'm aware of the body of it from discussion at board level.
I would recommend that you get a copy of that and read it, because I have 2 questions regarding that. One is whether or not you agree with all of the detail in that letter. And secondly, whether you could have or would have provided us that letter if asked.
Okay, yeah, I'll have to read the letter to answer both of those.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Yep. And Chris, you'll forward him a copy of that letter.
Take care of it today.
Thank you.
Question.
Go ahead, Mr. Tinkle.
Danny, I could have swore when I read the Commerce Lakes bids that there were like 5 or 6 bids for the utility work that range from like $724 up to like $900 and some thousand. Did each one of the bidders that bid the prime work had the choice to select their own sub for the utility work? And if so, did the low bidder that did the total job, did his sub give us the low bid of the utility portion?
Yeah, so the way the bid was set up is obviously it was a public bid. If the prime contractor had the ability to do the entire project, the road work as well as the underground, they have that luxury and option. I don't believe any of the bids had the prime doing the underground work. So, and I haven't looked at all of the bids, but as I understand, they were all different. They all had different subs doing the proposed to do the underground work. And KBR, I believe, was the underground contractor. KBR Site Development, I think their name. They are a licensed underground contractor. They were on the low bid team, and as I understand, that was the low of the utility work. So that is the best bid for the utility work that was received.
So we have not only the low prime, but we have the low sub of the low prime in doing the work at that 700,000 plus value, correct?
Yes, as I understand. And I haven't looked at all of the bids, but Tyler has, and that's what I understand.
And his credentials are the one that you are possibly challenging on the ability to do the work.
Well, and I think if we just need to know who is actually doing the work, so we can check the references, and we may find that it's somebody that we already know and we're completely comfortable with. But right now, we don't know KBR or whatever their name is, and all we know is that the references that were provided when we contact them, the references said that they were merely acting as a construction manager and hired another contractor to actually do the installation on the references that they provided. So if they're able to provide, say again?
Did the bid documents allow the prime to hire a sub or a vendor to do the utility who could then sub the work? A lot of bid documents won't allow that.
I don't believe there was a restriction to that.
So there's a very good chance then that this guy is taking a 10% cut off the top and further subbing it out to somebody we don't even know who it is.
Well, yes, but I'll say that although KBR is a sub and they are an underground contractor, the principals, the owners of KBR are also the same principals and owners of the prime, right? So I had that question earlier to Tyler and amongst ourselves is, yeah, does that mean they're double dipping, that KBR is taking 10% and then Wright's taking 10%? And that certainly could be the case, but in the sense that they're one and the same, they're separated by, that's just their business plan, as they've separated the companies probably for liability purposes for underground versus other work. I don't see why they would do that. But the fact of the matter is, they were the low on the project for both as the prime for the overall work and the low for the underground portion.
To what extent can we vet them by calling and checking them out? Do we have any?
I asked Alex, Alex Slaby, he's the project manager with the county. I asked if we could reach out to KBR directly and, get references. And his response was no, everything must go through Lee County's procurement. And that's been my experience in the past as well. I don't know that.
Was made today.
No, sorry.
That request for the references went through their procurement office today.
I got some real concern of having somebody that we've not been able to check out and validate, doing our work, but then us picking up the tab for him to do our work.
Well, I've explained to the county that
issue there.
I've explained to the county that we would not be able to make a recommendation until we had those references, and that the next time that the board meets is July 2nd. So at this point, we will not be able to make a recommendation to the board until July the 2nd. That's where we stand.
Chris, did you get any feedback on the request?
It was sent from procurement to the contractors to provide that information back.
I've got real concern. If the contractor's doing it and the contractor's got credentials to show that he can do that underground work, that's one thing. But if he's turning around and supervising it and subbing it out to a totally unknown entity, I got a real problem with that. Chris,
Well, and we don't know. All we know is that the references that they provided for the sub that they proposed to use, KBR.
We can hear you, Danny.
We know that the references. Say again.
We can't hear you.
I don't know. I don't know what more I could do. I got my volume up and I'm almost yelling. But what I'm saying is that all we know is that the prime, Wright Construction, is proposing to use KBR. KBR is a licensed underground contractor. We don't know that KBR is or is not going to actually perform the work. All we know is that the references that the counties provided for KBR do not give us the ability to make a recommendation, because those references said that the work they've done with KBR, KBR was merely a construction manager, and they hired a sub to do that work. So all we're saying is that based on the references provided, we cannot make a recommendation.
Do you know where that KBR is located?
Yeah, they're in Fort Myers.
They're in
Lee
Fort
County.
Myers.
Yes.
And they've never been one of your jobs, or you know nothing about them?
No, never worked with them before. And we do a lot of utility work.
Okay, since this is not an action item today, let's let Danny finish doing this work on this and investigation so that we can keep the meeting moving. Danny, did you
I apologize for the diversion.
No, that's
I apologize
okay.
for the diversion. I wanted to bring that up to the board because the next time we can actually make a recommendation will be at the next board meeting, just so everybody knows.
Mrs. Steinberg?
Okay.
Yes, just one little follow-up question to Mr. Nelson before you.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Nelson, will you personally talk to all the references to make sure that they are legitimate?
Yeah, absolutely. Once we get them, in fact, the references that they provided, I know the references personally anyhow. So that's what we did. Tyler and I both talked to them, but again, I can't use those references. I need to know for sure who's doing the work, and if their response is it's KBR, then I don't see how at this point we can give a positive recommendation until they give different references that actually show the work that they've done. And certainly I'll reach out to those references. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Danny, did you have anything else besides that?
No, ma'am, that was it.
Okay,
but I'll stay on the
then.
line in case anything else comes up.
Okay, thank you, Danny. Chris, let's move back now to the audit.
Okay, we'll move back now. We have a presentation up. This is consideration of the FY 2019 financial audit. And we have Jay Gaines online to make that presentation representing the firm. Mr. Gaines?
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. As he said, my name is Jay Gaines, and I'm the audit director for Burger Toombs, Elam, Gaines, and Frank. And we performed the audit for the Gateway Services Community Development District for fiscal year ending September 30, 2019. So you can go to the next slide, please. Go ahead and skip that one and go to the next one. Our annual financial report consists of 5 sections. The first section is the report of the independent auditors. Then there's a management discussion and analysis. Then we go through the financial statements, the notes to the financial statements, and then at the end of the report is our compliance stuff. On our report to the independent auditors on page 2 of the report, we say, in our opinion, the basic financial statements referred to above present fairly in all material respects the financial position of the governmental activities, the business type activities, each major fund, and the aggregate fund information as of September 30, 2019, and the respective changes in financial position and budgetary comparisons in conformity with generally accepted accounting principles in the United States of America. Because this is a single audit, we also have to make an opinion on the schedule of expenditures of state projects. That's at the bottom of page 2. And in that we say, in our opinion, the schedule of expenditures of state projects as required by the Florida Department of Financial Services is fairly stated in all material respects in relation to the basic financial statements as a whole. Now, on the next slide, we give you a brief overview of what the management's discussion and analysis consists of. It's summarized financial information in a narrative format over the net position at September 30th, the change in net position for the year, along with comparative summaries for the last year. You also have some capital asset activity, summarized changes in capital assets, general fund budgetary information, long-term debt information, and economic factors. Now we go to the basic financial statements, and we have the statement of net position, the statement of activities, the governmental fund statements, and then the budgetary comparisons for the general and special revenue funds. And then we have your water and sewer fund statements, and finally, there's a statement of fiduciary net position. First, your statement of net position, which is on page 11. For governmental activities, your assets were almost 38 million, and your net position was 28 million. For business type activities, your assets were almost 29 million, and your net position was a little over 26 million. So totally, your assets are about 66.7 million, and your net position is about 54.6 million. On the next slide is our statement of activities, and your governmental activities revenue was 7.6 million. Your expenses were 10 million, so you had a deficit change in net position of 2.4 million. For business type activities, your revenues were 5.5 million. Your expenses were 5 million, so you had a positive change in net position of almost $500,000. In total, the total revenues were 13 million. Total expenses were 15 million, so your negative change in net position was almost 1.9. Now we move to the governmental funds. You have assets totaling, on the balance sheet, you have assets totaling a little over 9 million, liabilities a little less than 1 million, so your fund balances are 8 million. Now the difference between the numbers we just talked about and the ones we're talking about now is that the governmental funds have a current measurement focus, so they don't include capital assets, long-term debt, and any other liabilities that aren't expected to be paid from available resources. Your statement of revenues, expenses, and changes in fund balance show total revenues of a little over 7 million, total expenditures of 9 million, other sources of 3.4 million, and that's mainly the loan programs from the state. And your net change in fund balance was a positive 1.7 million. Now we're going to look at the budgets. And you had, these are budget expenditures exceeded actual expenditures for the general fund and all the special revenue funds for the year ended September 30th, 2019. And as you can see, we've listed how much under budget each fund was, with Stony Brook Fund and the Town Lakes Fund coming closest to break even. Now on the next slide, we talk about the Water and Sewer Fund. Now, because it's an enterprise fund, its numbers are exactly the same as the numbers were when we talked about business activities previously. So the assets are almost 29 million, the liabilities are a little over 2, so you have a net position of 26.3 million. Your operating revenues are 5.4, your operating expenses are just about $5 million. So you had an operating income of just a little over 440,000, and your change in net position was almost 491,000. And the last statement is a statement of fiduciary net position, and your assets equal your liabilities here, and that's 241,000. And this relates to a debt that you issued several years ago that the district has no financial responsibility for. You're just acting as an agent. You're collecting the money from the owners and making the debt service payments. Our notes to financial statements, which is the next slide, consist of 21 pages, and I'm not going to read each note today because we want to be out of here by midnight. But
Good.
there's a summary of significant accounting policies. We have cash and investment balances. We go through interfund balances and the purposes for those balances, scheduled changes in capital assets, and also a detailed list of long-term obligations along with the balances. So to highlight a couple of them, your capital assets for governmental activities are 29 million. You had additions of 407, disposals of 53, and depreciation of 1.4 million. For your business type activities, you had 20 million in capital assets, additions of again 400,000, disposals of about 38,000, and depreciation of just over $1 million. And your long-term debt highlights, your total debt for governmental activities is $9 million, a little over $9 million. You issued in 3.4 million in new loans this year, and you made $400,000 in principal. In the business activities, your total debt is about 1.1 million. No new debt this year, and you made principal payments of $425,000. And as I said earlier, the issuance of long-term debt was for 2 state revolving loan funds relative to the Lake Bank restoration. Now we go to our compliance and management letters. I'm pleased to report that these reports are on page 48 through 52. There's 3 different reports. The first report is the internal control and compliance letter. I'm pleased to report we have no deficiencies in internal control to report, nor are there any compliance issues to report. In our management letter, last year we had a management letter finding because the budget for the Lake Bank restoration was overexpended. That was corrected in the current year, and we have no current year management letter findings for this year. And section 218-415, which deals with investments, we issued an attestation report that said that you complied with that section in your investing activities. On page 53 through 59, this is our single audit reporting. The first one is the scheduled expenditures of state projects. You had expenditures of a little over $3 million this year in your state projects. The next page, 2 pages, are our schedule of findings and question costs. We have no findings or question costs. And again, in our compliance letter, which is on page 57 through 59, there were no compliance issues with the state project. And we have one other thing we have to talk about, and I call it, it's the SAS 114 letter. And SAS stands for Statement of Auditing Standards. I refer to it as the Enron letter because this letter was a offshoot of the Enron audit failure several years ago. And here we have 3 things that we have to communicate to the board. The first one is that we communicate management responsibilities. We also want you to know that there were no immaterial, uncorrected misstatements. And we had no difficulties dealing with management. I'd even make a more positive statement and say that it was a very smooth process because of the way that management helped us go through the process. And we do need to let you know that the Lake Bank Restoration Fund has a deficit fund balance at September 30th, 2019. And that's basically because you spend the money first and then you apply for the loan and you get the loan money. So that concludes my presentation, and I'll entertain any questions.
Okay, I'll start with Mrs. Flaherty.
The only question I have is the 2007 bond, maybe Mr. Pierce could tell me where that's from, that he was talking about.
Again, that was a bond that was issued obviously in 2007. And that's the one that the board has no financial responsibility for. And what I mean by that is that the board, if the bonds you would have no responsibility to pay off the bonds if for some reason the debt service stream dried up.
Jim, what bond issue was that? Was that a refinancing or?
Thank you.
And what community was that associated with or not at all?
It was a bond issue to finance certain improvement projects. And you collect the assessments from the property owners and you account for this in an agency fund until remitted to the trustee for bond payments. But you have no direct or contingent liability or moral obligation for payment of this debt, which is different than the other ones.
And where's the reference in the audit?
Say that again?
So what page may we find information about that in the audit itself? Or Stephen, could you answer the question?
46, note H.
Note H.
And it was originally a $2.45 million bond, and it's down to $250,000. So you almost have enough cash to pay it off.
I have to go back and check to see what series 2007 bonds they are. Stephen, do you know off the top of your head?
That's the one that was paid off this year. That's the area 1 and 2 I think you're referring to.
Okay. So it was paid off subsequent to the end of the fiscal year?
That's correct. May. It was last month, I believe. It was May 1st.
Is that something they may want to indicate as a subsequent event as a note? Or not?
We were not informed about that, and our report was actually dated May the 5th. So it was a timing issue. Normally that would be a subsequent event if we were informed about it and it wasn't so close to the date of our report.
Stephen, do you think it's appropriate to ask that be a revision to the audit report to reflect that subsequent event?
If Mr. Gaines has no problem with that, I don't. Like you mentioned, it was just a timing issue.
The only question I would have would be, have you already sent this to the state of Florida?
No, not this one. No, we have not.
Well, Stephen, if you can give me the information, we can try and get you a revised report, by the middle of next week. But I need you to give me the information tomorrow.
Sure, I can do that.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Flair.
Thank you. That was my only question, Mrs. Steinberg.
Okay, Mr. Guy,
I have none.
Mr. Banks,
I have none.
Mr. Tinkle,
I have none.
and I don't have any questions either. So thank you for your presentation, Mr. Gaines, and for your patience.
Okay, everybody have a great afternoon. Thank you.
You too. Thank you. I think that brings us back to District Attorney.
Don't have any further information as to the status of the request from the Attorney General, and they do the review on their own time. And I've seen them take months. I've seen them take longer than that. I've seen them not even provide an opinion. So, and I don't like to buzz. That's on their lead. The opinion for the request.
On
the roads.
the roads.
Yeah, I've not heard anything more. And again, the process is such that I don't contact them. They'll let me know what the results are, if any at all.
Trump's got her busy.
And that was all you had, Tony?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, District Management Report.
Excuse me, may I ask a question, Madam Chair?
To Mr. Pierce?
Yes.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. It says, are we supposed to make a motion for the approval of the audit?
I would suggest if we're going to do that, we do that.
Yeah, it's on the agenda, that's why I'm asking.
I would suggest that move to approve the audit with addition of the subsequent event of the payment of the Series 2007 bonds. Good question, Mr. Clerk.
Do you want to make that motion, Mrs. Flaherty?
I will make that motion with the, says just
Subsequent event amendment.
with the subsequent amendments. Thank you. Yes.
I'll say that.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? 5-0. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Flaherty. Management report.
And we just have a few things under management reports, really just informational. We've been working at the staff level and with staff for the Florida Rural Water Association to complete a risk and resilience report that's EPA required. It's due next June, but we're trying to get in front of it. Estimate about 180 hours of staff time we'll put in compiling this report and all the information. And also right after that follows emergency response plan, and those plans both have to be submitted to the EPA and certified to them, and they review those plans. Good part is we did get assistance from Rural Water to help compile this. If you got in on the front end, they get some funding from FDEP to do a lot of that work, and otherwise we'd probably be paying a consultant about $20,000 or more to help us pull all that information together to compile it, present it. It has helped a lot from different ways of looking at things from their standpoint, federal agency, and also putting together our emergency response plan. We've added some things in there with the response plan from Securitas and Pelican and the contact information. We provided them with a lot of information from the insurance company on claims to make during storms. So it's helped with some of that cooperation. We also put a copy in of the proposed pond standards for the July 2nd meeting, really just to get in front of those standards and get them out in the community as soon as we could, versus 1 week in the board book for the next meeting. You know, so I had a meeting the other day, and I'll have details in our staff report for the first of the month, but we met with the staff online with Lee County Utilities and went over a number of topics with them, engineering, customer service, plant capacity. And one thing on the capacity they're looking at is down the road more in the 27, 28, but they divert flow to the city of Fort Myers plant, and they'll be diverting that flow to the Gateway facility. So that'll greatly increase the quantity of reclaimed water available at the wastewater treatment plant. We also got some preliminary plans in. You may notice when you're driving up Gateway Boulevard, the drainage canal comes from Stony Brook and it cuts through Hidden Links. Well, there's a development proposal underway for that parcel. It's preliminary. They haven't submitted anything to the district, but they talked about vacating that drainage easement. You know, whether they want to pipe it or what they want to do with that flow going through there, we're not sure, but that's just in the works. And another item we'll be bringing up to the next agenda, and during the budget discussions, we looked at decorative signs at the different roundabouts. And we also got a quote to put the decorative signs in at the school roundabout. And if we replace those signs with our signs, it would be a net $20,000 cost to the district. And, so mentioned too, we're having a staff meeting tomorrow with the lunch. We're going over a number of topics, but if any of the supervisors would like to attend, you're certainly welcome. And we also had
to the extent that
one
supervisor, yes.
at different times.
It's not plural.
It'd be kind of a fun event. I'm thinking.
We'll just have them get their plate of food and leave.
Early talk about the food.
Yeah. That'll be coming up. And we also, I'm going to ask Glenn Schroeder to stand up. We've having should I say, issues with the soccer park, because we did open it up, to residents. And basically what we've gotten is kind of like the same reaction they got when they opened the beach in Naples and had everybody from the East Coast come over. got leagues coming in from North Fort Myers, Bonita Springs, men's leagues. I guess some tournaments have been moved into July and August, and they need a place to practice. And they're all coming to Gateway.
And are all social distancing?
No, sir. And
Not one bit.
it's created quite a few problems over there and some conflicts. But anyway, let Glenn just talk about what we're going to try to plan to do with it. It's really falling back on what we did last summer.
Are they
Glenn?
protesting?
Glenn Shorter, Gateway Services, Park and Recs. I just wanted to bring to everybody's attention.
Your mic and where you're speaking on it.
It doesn't work, just go ahead.
I just want to bring to everybody's attention that we are having a lot of problems over at the soccer field due to the fact that we can't control access or be able to keep people out to the soccer field that don't belong there. Some of the soccer groups that have been here lately in the last week have taken a very large advantage of us and have had more people out there than they're supposed to. No social distancing, no parents abiding to the rules or anything else. It's very hard for us to control something that we don't have control over. On January 2nd, we're going to go ahead and present a few things and some ideas about the soccer field to the board for approval. And as of tomorrow, we're going to put up, I'm sorry, July 2nd. And as of tomorrow, we're going to go ahead and put up the orange fencing like we have in the past, like last summer, to block off fields 3, 4, and 5 and leave 1 and 2 open for our residents to use.
Are these people paying us?
No, sir, they're just showing up and using it.
How are they doing?
The gates are open. They just walk on.
They just walk on?
They just walk on and use it. They drive here, they show up, they use the park, and if we say anything to them, it's usually a
What's those signs, violators, trespassing?
People don't read signs, sir. We have so many signs up there saying this is for Gateway residents, a Gateway resident use only, and fees that are to be paid. People walk right past them.
But if you have a sign, it's enforced.
Yes,
Yeah, I put up a sign and call police.
And I have to comment because really with law enforcement, they're going to come over here and they take a look at youth playing soccer out on a soccer field. And it doesn't really concern them or rise to their level of taking action.
You just tell them that they're trespassing on our property.
Well, and asked me, Tony, for some clarification, but like last night I went over, there was one group that of course elite and they're used to being out there. We had another group that showed up and the fellow lives in Gateway and coaches, you know, he's a Fort Pay coach, and had a group of 8 people over there and 2 of them were Gateway residents and, you know, kind of guessed that they were practicing for a tournament. And I just asked them to move over to another field because they were on the field with the new sod and the wet field. And I said, could you at least please move over? We had a men's club show up from Bonita that had 30 players out there, and 2 of the people did live in Gateway, but there was no goals on the field, so they just set up strips. And what we're getting is a lot of usage on the field. We had a coach from North Fort Myers that came over with 14 people, and they're basically saying no place else is open, and someone said your place is open, so they're coming over here. We opened the fields up when the parks opened up with the county on a partial to try and give some relief to the residents or an area where they could go kick a ball or fly a kite. And we removed most of the goals from the field. And I went out there yesterday and there was a group of teenagers pulling the goals out of the parking lot and moving them out onto the field. But
Well, part of it is if you have a club, that's an organized group. I think we have a policy and a rule schedule and a schedule. As to the fact that it said you're not allowed, you didn't reserve it.
Right.
I think that's one way to address that. As far as them moving the equipment, it's one of those that's, yeah, now you really leave. And I think that you get law enforcement, hopefully there'd be more. I know what you mean about they see, but if they're individuals who are not authorized to be there, hopefully law enforcement will take a different stance.
well, I think for any type of enforcement with us, it's difficult. We'll bring some of those issues up in a second because, you know, do you want to go to a key card, but to ask us to be enforcement agents with groups of kids playing soccer on a soccer field, it's a difficult position. But instead of leaving it open like we have and, you know, the fields get torn up, we were going to go back to what we've done the past couple of years, which is we'll leave 2 fields in the back with 1 small goal for residents to play on. And then we'll put the fence up and have signs of the field closed. So it's just information to let you know that that's what we're moving forward. It's the same thing we've done in years past.
Glenn staying or is he gonna be leaving?
Do you have a question? Any
I
question?
have a question for Glenn.
Okay.
Mrs. Feinberg, may I ask it?
Yes, go right ahead.
I got an email today from Joe Mahoka about some proposal with Stony Brook. He wants me to look at it and also do this proposal.
I would love to do that. What day would you like to do that, tomorrow?
World,
Okay, how about Monday next week? Or
Monday, if it's in the morning, about 11 o'clock.
I'm available to you anytime you like. Just make it, call, write me an email and we'll get together.
Okay.
What are you talking
Some proposal for some hedges.
about? Oh, hedges.
All right, but I was asked about the proposal and since I need to see it and what we're talking about,
Yeah, I sent that off to Joe on 6/8.
well, I got it today and
Okay, yeah, I sent
and
it off.
he asked me my opinion and I want to see what we're talking
Yes,
about.
yes, ma'am. Anytime you would like to get together, just let me know.
Okay, so 11 o'clock Monday is good?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, then I'll meet you in the parking lot of the Stony Brook, is that good?
That's fine. At the clubhouse?
Yep.
Very well.
Okay,
Thank you. All right, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Glenn. Chris, I have a suggestion. I know that Avery was going to send some questions about the littorals. And if anybody else has sent any emails or have any ideas or questions, make sure that all of those emails get forwarded to Flavia and the ponds work group so they are aware of them so they can be prepared for the workshop, please.
We'll take care of that. And that concludes all our management reports and we're ready.
Is Kenny gonna be here?
He's outside.
I got a question. Gateway Greens, we got notified yesterday that it looks like within 3 weeks, we're gonna be starting construction on the fiber optic system. Rather fast. What I want to find out is what's the coordination that you guys would like to have, seeing plans of where this is going relative to our facilities.
Gateway Greens fiber optic.
We'll be starting in 3 weeks.
You'll be starting underground boring for that,
Yeah.
fiber optics in a few weeks?
Found it out yesterday. We're meeting next Thursday to go over the 7 sites where they have their main, what I call pump stations in water language, but the main places where they feed off of, the community's being divided into 7 components. And we're going to be looking at those sites. Once they've got that pretty much tied down and finalized, they're ready to go. I thought they had to do some permitting with the county, but their position was these are private roads. They don't have to go to the county at all. They're big boys at Comcast, so my thing was, I'm hoping, I saw an aerial yesterday that looked like maybe at 1,000 feet, and you couldn't hardly read where the lines were at, what they were doing, but they're going to bring larger scale drawings. What I told them is I'd like to do is as quick as we get a final plan, they get a final plan, that we get it over here so that we can see and or guesstimate where we're going to have problems. They're going to be boring at 2 to 3 feet depth. They're of the opinion they're going to be missing everything, and I said.
They always are.
I said, well, they have 2. Believe me, I've been there, done that. We have 2 contractors, Night Construction, Mastech. And
That's my favorite.
Your first mess up.
Yeah, the second one's my favorite. How many, yeah, they said a number of lines.
it is what it is. But my point is that I told them, when you come up on those borings and coming from 3 feet up, there's a lot of stuff that can be hit. They're gonna mark everything and do all that, call out all the utility marks. But I said, I just want to make sure that staff here knows so that we have the equipment ready to go and valves ready to isolate when you hit a water line and or a reuse line, that if we have to shut it down, we don't have to shut down the whole community. So I'm going to say probably after next Thursday, they're going to be at the point where they're ready to finalize plans. We need to probably the week after that sit down with you all to show you what we got.
And they're planning on starting in
3 weeks. What they said yesterday is 3 weeks from yesterday.
Okay.
And they're gonna be doing Old Gateway Greens first, which will be Hidden Lakes, Walden Lakes, Mahogany Run North, Mahogany Run South, and Gateway Greens west over to the maintenance building.
Just a question for you. You run fiber throughout your whole development?
I'm sorry,
You want to do fiber throughout the whole development?
yes,
Front easement, rear easement?
all front.
All right, they got to bring the fiber then off Gateway Boulevard. They don't have fiber back in none of those developments.
Fiber's already there, off Gateway Boulevard, all the way back to the intersection of Gateway Greens Drive and Mahogany Run North. There's a box there, and it's divided into 4 zones, and the back goes out. Fiber is right there. They're talking about bringing a fiber feed up from the south off of Commerce Lakes up to 2 nodes, one behind Hammock Cove and one behind Westing.
That'll be permanent.
I'm sorry,
That'll be permanent.
yeah, but that's 2021. 2020 is this.
I will get our staff as prepared as we can get for that community, but.
I'm gonna try to get drawings as quick as I can that are a halfway decent scale that we can start looking at and trying to second guess where we're gonna have problems. But everything is, that question came up, Brian, yesterday. Is there any backlot deals? And their thing was, as cluttered as the lots and landscaped as they are, fenced, treed, you name it. In the back of all of our lots, there's just no way to get anything in there. And on that would, I would agree with it, but it's just too dense. So they're going in the front of essentially every lot in that utility strip between the edge of the curb and 10 feet back.
And they're gonna hit about 30% of your stuff. Average.
Well, they made it clear to us, ain't nobody gonna put this in without hitting something. So that.
Right after they tell you they're not gonna hit
That's a
anything.
general statement, yeah. We're just trying to make sure that they hit anything, make sure it's not big stuff.
Is there any owner's representative for Gateway Greens that is going to be doing any inspection or monitoring these contractors?
If you'd have been in that 4-hour meeting this morning, you thought we were poor as paupers. Nobody wants to talk about that. I said, well, what we may end up having to do is have a bunch of sidewalk superintendent volunteers.
Okay.
I can try to accelerate the valve tapping up into that old community as fast as we can, but
Do what?
the valve tapping, what we're doing next Tuesday. But that's on the backside community. They're gonna start.
Yeah,
the front
that really
side.
doesn't impact this. Where we've got the exposure now is on that old section, and how many of those valves that are critical valves work? None of them?
None of them that I know of.
That means they're going to store water.
So I can accelerate the tapping as fast as I can get it done to try to get it, ahead of it.
But what I'd like to do is sit down with you when we see the plans, try to determine where critical valves are, that if we have a break.
We've already done that. We've got that all set
You
out.
got that all set out?
We already know where everything is. What we want, what we're planning on doing. Not on a 30-day plan, but I mean, I can try to accelerate as fast as I can.
I got to see what the plans look like, but it is going right where you guys are at. All of your water and reuse on one side of the road, they're going to essentially be paralleling lines on both sides of almost every road so as to minimize the number of bore cuts or the borings.
Yeah, you've got water and irrigation on one
side, the other
sewer
side.
on the other.
Yeah.
Sanitary sewer down the middle.
Okay, I just want to give you a heads up, it's coming.
If I can make one comment, the reality of the situation is to prevent a disaster with us in the utilities. We're probably going to absorb $100,000 in costs in locates, GPR, and full-time construction supervision. Because Stony Brook tried the same thing and we ended up with half a road washed out for 3 days. It took us 6 months to get our water back. We'll have staff time boil water notices due to the breaks. We'll have to do sampling. And we'll have to have people out there, and I don't have the staff, and Kenny doesn't to do that. So we'll be bringing in contractors, but I'll tell you what, I'd rather pull $100,000 out than be out there every 2 or 3 days with line breaks, because if you don't have somebody on top of those people every day, then every day something's going to be hit. And what I worry about is when they go through and hit people's sewer laterals, hit their irrigation lines, disrupt their driveways, and they hide things that they break. best they can, and then people come back into town and their yards are brown in certain zones. They have a sewer backup in their line, or their irrigation controller doesn't work, and they're already gone, and there's no one to point the finger at, and they call us. And we got calls from Stony Brook for 6 months after they got out, and we're still getting calls.
We discussed all that.
Sewer laterals are gonna be the most common hit.
Do what?
Sewer laterals are the most common hit.
That's what I figured would be.
When they come from the where it comes out from under the house and into the sanitary sewer, that first
Very
6
shallow.
feet off of that house, that's where they hit them. And a lot of times you won't know until you get a backup. And then with the old part of Gateway, they don't have clean out, so it's gonna be even.
Not in the old park, but my clean outs at the house.
Sure. And most people are buried. Most people have no idea where those are. And that's where we would have to go in to camera.
Yeah, and I talk about the cost for us, that's just to protect our lines. I'm not going on private property,
private
because if
property.
they bust people's lines, I'll leave that up to the HOA to deal with the residents, but it's gonna be a huge cost.
Those laterals are just.
Good, that raises a good question. On sewer laterals, at what point, typically when we did projects up north, we would run 6-inch wide, 8 by 6 inch
From
wide.
where the 4 goes to the 6. From the 4 goes to the 6.
Up to the property line, and at that point, if the property owner wanted to reduce it to a 4, that was the line of demarcation, that was district versus individual. How do we do it here?
When you would be right away.
That's on the right away, even, yeah.
Or where the 4 inch goes to 6 inch.
Well, hold on, there's the problem, like where I live on that cul-de-sac, that right of way is out about 10 feet into the grass and into my yard, which means then that the liability of their main going through that same area, it's all going to be district damage. It's not going to be individual property owners, it's all going to be district damage.
When you get into the back of those cul-de-sacs where you have those long lawns, that's very typical. Because usually you'll have a sanitary sewer connection in the center of that cul-de-sac.
But what I want to do is make sure that we've got, in talking to them, I want to have plans with, that show all of our as-built, as-founds.
Sure.
Have those out and ready to go wherever those guys are at.
Mr. Tinkle, is this something that you can work out with Kenny and Chris, since
Yeah,
it's,
Sure that everybody understands, because there's a lot of liability on this, and we
I
learned hard way on the one up there in your neck of the woods.
did, Ms. Flaherty, did you have any questions for staff or Mr. Shoemaker?
No, I was holding off to my supervisor comments.
Okay. Mr. Guy, did you have any questions for Mr. Shoemaker or staff?
No question.
Mr. Guy?
Mr. Banks,
No
did you have any questions? Thank you, Mr. Guy. Mr. Banks, did you have any questions?
I did not, thanks.
Okay, and I did not have any additional questions, so let's move to action items. 5A is proposed 2020-2021 capital facilities plan.
Sure. This is just a follow-up from what began as the hydraulic model and then morphed into the facilities plan that was recently submitted and approved by the DEP. The list of projects that we had for potential funding. And it's, of course, started out in 2017 with the hydraulic model, 2019 with the facilities plan. So we have about $100,000 in engineering already into this. And basically it was a phased plan of recommended wastewater and irrigation system improvements from that hydraulic model, that study that was done. And what we're looking at today is a number of those projects and $6 million. And I'll just mention them. It's a new 20-inch and 12-inch force main at $1.02 million. Emergency bypass pumps for 12 master stations, a 12-inch irrigation main at $924,000, Lower Hawthorne well at $900,000. The other recommended project on the irrigation pump and controls, we're doing that right now with cash flow. We're looking at wet weather excess discharge, 1.2 million, and a 2.0 million gallon irrigation storage tank. And what we're recommending is that the board approve this list of projects really for us to submit a request for inclusion to the DEP. And at that point, they'll put it in their August funding meeting to approve funding for design only. And then we would come back to the board asking if they wanted to move forward with that project, and the borrowing at probably a year in the design process, and you go back the next year for the construction dollars. And looking at this as an alternative to total cash flow, which we don't have to do these projects, they were identified as being needed. And that's just the next step in the process, is that request for inclusion on the priority list.
Question?
Sir.
Before I make the motion to do that and approve it to be included on the request for inclusion, you mentioned earlier that the wastewater treatment plant was going to be receiving additional flow. Did we get an idea of how many million gallon a day that's going to be?
Well, it would be
potentially
it's over 1.5 million. It's a flow that's going right now. And
$1.5 million above what we have now.
Yes, sir.
We're about what, 2.1 right now?
Yes, sir. That's why they're expanding that plant over there.
So it's a significant increase in the amount of water that would be available to us for reuse.
Right. And we're not committing to doing all these projects right now. The force main is something, that we really are looking at. The irrigation main is solid, but on the irrigation side, some of those additional facilities, we may be able to postpone.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, but it's really just getting in the process, because you can't turn around later and go, oh, we decided we want to do it. It's easier not to put the funding application in. So this is just, it's just getting us on the list.
I'll make the motion to approve the list of projects to be listed on the request for inclusion.
Yeah, we have a motion. Second.
I'll second with, I have a question first. Mrs. Steinberg?
Will you second? So then it opens it up for discussion. So go ahead and ask your question.
This is design only, you said, right?
Correct.
So this is not anything that's planned to do this year? It's not in this year's budget?
No, it'll be, it would go into next year, and it would be totally with borrowing and totally with the engineering, design, and permitting on all these projects. And all those would come back to the board for approval to borrow the money and sign the applications before moving forward.
Okay, so this is design only.
The only thing I'm at, and you aren't even improving the design, what you're approving today is for us to put in the request for inclusion form. So when they go to their funding meeting in August, that they make that funding available.
Thank you, Mrs. Steinberg.
Mr. Guy, any questions, comments?
I think these are very big numbers, especially in an era when our residents have lost their jobs. And although we've talked about some of these in the past, I am very hesitant to give you any kind of go ahead at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Guy. Mr. Banks?
Yeah, and just to be clear, Chris, there, outside of any approval, is there any budgeting requirements for 2021, whether it's just design or anything like that?
No, there wouldn't be. If the board comes back and decides to move forward with any of these projects, it would be using the SRF money. We look at it as just an option. If we move forward, you can look at financing, you can look at cash flow. The SRF's the cheapest money available to anybody right now on these projects. So it's really just providing an option. Now, where you're going to see the budgetary impact, and we'll be showing you that quite clearly in September, as we have a rate study underway that's looking at what the cost of this roundabout utility relocation is going to be, because right now at the $732,000 estimate plus engineering, design, and the permitting, you're looking at a $900,000 price tag. It would probably be for Commerce Lakes up to 1.2 million. And those costs would go directly into the rate base of the utility or into the utility rates. So we're going to have those itemized out, and also each one of these projects, what the debt service costs would be and how it would impact the utility rates for the customer.
Well, keep in mind, we had a capital reserve study that we staggered these out over a period of 2021 to 2025. So that was a plan that we had adopted some time ago.
And the projects that I have listed here were in the phase one of those projects.
Okay,
Once
thank
the
you.
camel gets his nose under the tent.
Sir?
The camel getting his nose under the tent.
Oh.
I can't hear what he said.
Camel getting his nose under the tent.
I did not have any comments or questions, so if nobody else has anything they'd like to say, I think I'll call the vote. And Chris, I'm going to ask you to roll call this one, please.
Supervisor Flaherty?
Yes.
Supervisor Guy?
No.
Supervisor Banks?
Yes.
Supervisor Feinberg?
Yes.
Supervisor Tinkle?
Yes.
Okay, that motion passes 4-1, and we will fill that form out and submit it to the DEP. And the next item that we have on the agenda, and I'll ask Brian Brashear, our Public Works Manager, to come up. This is change orders for Lakes 103 and 83.
Yes, Brian Brashear, Public Works. Change orders again. I know we love these. Lakes 103, and these are the areas for littorals to put rocks down, because these were areas that basically were others on the original plans. Lake 103, Matt Terrace pretty much got that one done. That changed orders for $24,000. Littorals are not planted due to the high water. That'll happen later in the year when the water goes back down, but the rocks are thinner in those areas where littorals will be planted. The big one on here is Lake 83. We got a quote for rock and a quote for sod. Issue with placing sod below the control point is it will die off when it floods in the summertime and goes underwater. I do not recommend doing sod because you'll be doing it every year. So the only way to fix this, you have 800 linear feet over there. So you're looking at rock costing you around $80,000 more. So I know we have a lot of washouts over there. You want to stop the washouts in the area where the black silt's at? I suggest we hurry up and put rock as quick as possible, because if we don't, we'll just have to continue more washouts throughout the rainy season. I've talked to Flavia. She's aware of it. One homeowner where his yard was tore up, I spoke to Steve's name. I made agreement with Steve that his yard will be fixed once everything is done, because I had a feeling we'd have to come back and do this additional rock. So there's more buggies got to go around the lake. So
Are we going to do this by boat and barge, or are we going to do it the old fashioned?
we got little buggies, and buggies are going to go around the lake and dump it. And you got to have people do it by hand, because now you have plantings and rocks, and littorals are planted along with trees. So I got one quote from Matt Tire. He was local. I know Abby's already taken off back to the other coast, but normally about a linear square foot, they're all about the same price.
So this stone is going to go in the area where the filter fabric was, that the littorals are to be placed.
The littorals are already planted.
The littorals are planted.
And the trees. Everything's already planted.
But they only go to the control elevation. Correct.
Trees, correct.
So this would be that stone necessary to get from that elevation up to the sod or down to the water?
Water to the sod. And I got a map. That's not 103. Go to the next map. You look, it's a 2-page map, but there's areas designated for littorals all around the whole lake. It comes out to like 800 linear square feet. So
and you're going to stage in that same yard again?
No, well, we will, but what I want to do is put the rock over by the playground. That will just buggy through the guy's yard. I don't know if you're aware of the little buggies we use over at Gateway Greens, are less damaging. Yes. And Matt Tire does have them on hold right now up at the soccer park, pending this meeting, because if you say yay, he's going to jump as soon as you want to jump.
And we're going with a smaller stone.
Number 4 stone, correct.
Mrs. Feinberg, I have a couple of questions.
She's gone.
She's gone?
She's on. Her camera's not on.
Can I- My question? All
That's
right.
cool.
Are you gonna fix all the erosion before you put these rocks? I mean, there's a lot of erosion there.
I'm aware of the erosions. Here's an issue I would rather address, since your water level is back up. You have a year on these lakes. I suggest you wait on next April, May and do a final punch list and go back and fix every mess you got then. Because between now and then, you're gonna have more. It's the way the rainy season's here. I'm sorry, we hit it too late. We should have started these probably in November, not March. So I'm the point now, I say we get the rock down, we shore up what we have, then we'll go back and fix.
Get the photos before it gets any higher.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, I've walked the lake with Flavia numerous times because if we do, now we gotta change all the sprinkler heads out.
Right.
You're gonna do it twice.
And you'll be doing sod all the time. So I was like, we didn't even want to go that route.
Excuse me. Yeah, I was gonna say, if you do sod, there's the sprinklers, the water system doesn't go down and touch it.
Well, you'd have to
So-
change them all out. And we
Right.
know that. That's why the sod version would be about 20,000.
Mhm.
The sod itself's gonna be about 8 or 9, then you got another 7 or 8 for the sprinkler heads. So by the time you're done with it, you're gonna spend 20,000 on it, then you gotta replace the sod every year because it will go underwater below the control point.
Okay, now I have another question, because these are both change orders, okay? They were considered in the original bid.
No,
Why was this not considered in the original bid?
You'd have to ask Tetra Tech, ma'am. I was not here for that.
Okay, I'm just concerned that these things should have, there should have been consideration for,
The consideration, I've talked to Mr. Shoemaker and my counterparts. The 3 lakes that did not happen this year that are pushed out, I want them back. I want to include the littorals and everything at one price when it goes out the door, so I know that contractor, whoever has it, has everything. There's no more change orders for this 30 or 40 grand to come back because it was by others. It either should have been a separate line item and bid out, or it should have been part of the initial upfront. The pond standards that will happen hopefully next month, that will address these issues, and from going forth, we'll have it set in stone what we want. So that way, whoever wins the bid, lake, you have everything, whether from the fountains there, whatever the case may be on that lake.
right, so that we're considering everything, any problems that might have erosion or having to replace this with this little rock. So those would be in the,
That's my game plan.
okay, because to me, keep coming back with change orders seems to me that there's something wrong with this original. And
Miss Flaherty, if may I interrupt? Because I believe Brian, I don't know if purposely or not, is misleading the board. As he knows, littorals were not part of that original bid. They were not part of that original design per Gateway. He knows that. These are all requested and added by Gateway, by Brian.
I did not request it. They were already on the plan.
Brian does know that.
The issue here is I've got is, I understand where you're going, because I've had been on both sides of the fence on this. Before we make that decision to do it that way, which at a first glance is a more convenient way of doing it. I recall this issue coming up, and the vendors that were going to bid on this specifically told us they wanted no part of being in the littoral business. No part of it. I think what we need to do is to check. We ought to call Abby, and we call Metower, and any of the other 3 or 4 that bid these jobs, and just say, if we put littorals, in other words, the complete pond project on them, and you are responsible for getting the vendors, getting the littorals, planning the littorals, guaranteeing the littorals, will you bid our work? Because if they come back and say they won't bid the work, we're up the creek without a paddle. And that's what I recall they said the last time, and that's why it was done that way. They didn't want any part of it.
The major expense here is your rock on the littoral areas. If you'd have rock around the whole thing and come back with littorals on a separate item, you change yours.
All I'm saying is check it out, because if that's going to be a problem later on, let's go about it going into it.
And I mean, comment on the perspective with that too. And basically what it was is those areas were set aside because we do have littoral planting requirements. And it was basically restore the lake bank, put the black cloth down, and then you'd be able to go in and plant the littorals. But the weather had a lot to do with it, because if we would have gone in a little earlier, could have had littorals, they could have stabilized. Now it makes a problem. We do have a meeting next week with Abby to talk about that, and Matt Tower, and also Danny with the next set of plans for the lakes. He's sending them over. We're going to address that in the plans and also in the bid items to try, so the contractor, and also add it to the facilities plan for the DEP, so we can include all of that in the SRF funding.
Well, we know that the contractors who do this, but unless they've changed recently, they do not do this work. So they're going to be subbing it. They're going to be subbing it out. I just say, let's talk to the prime contractors, and if they will agree to come and bid our work under that proviso, it certainly is better for us because it's one-stop shop. But it sure has in the past not been the way that the bidders wanted to do it.
Unfortunately, we have a 10% contingency in the DEP contract that we can cover, this amount with. But we'll have it more organized moving forward and have it in the bid.
Yeah, I don't know who are the vendors that, if, let's say, Met Tower and Caddy would want to go out, who are the vendors that would be subbing with them and giving them prices to do this?
Any of the local firms, even Matt Tower, they do it, littoral planting and environmental planning, but we'd leave that up to the prime to hire the sub, but then it's a one-stop shop.
So that's what I was trying to get. Are there vendors to do that work?
Yes.
Okay.
We hired one to come out and do Magnolia Lakes.
They got all the insurance and the bonding capability and all that.
Yep.
That's where you usually have a problem. You can't find it. Okay, that's all I have.
Flavia's in the back of the room, standing there with her arms crossed. Let's ask the chair. She can approach and make a comment. Madam Chair? Is it okay?
Yeah, go ahead.
I just have two questions into the rocks. If we do the 4-inch all the way to control elevation, then we're gonna be short about a foot to where the 8-inch rock was placed, because when they let the water out, instead of staying at 23, went all the way down to 19. So we're gonna be having that gap. And then I wasn't sure if your comments were towards the littorals were from the other ponds that need to be done, because like Chris said, our littorals were planted. So that part is done. And then I don't know how the rock will literally go, if we're gonna just go on top of the littorals and then you're gonna still leave like a foot without rock. It just aesthetically.
Somebody's gonna go out there with that stone and basically hand place it around the littorals that have been planted.
Yeah, what I
See,
guess.
that's not the prime way of doing it.
Yeah, I guess
You
what
better
I'm,
have the stone down and then come back and put.
Now he has to dump it with a buggy and then spread out by hand
Yeah.
around the plants, the
What-
littorals and the trees.
I guess then my question is the 4 inches gonna go only to control? Because the control is not where they put the rock. That's what I'm trying to say. They put it a little bit lower than control. So we're gonna be short. So you have to add that.
We'll do the whole thing.
Okay. that's-
Water over the top.
Okay.
Motion to approve change orders.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the change orders. Any questions? Any further questions?
I have none. So
Guy, questions? Mr. Banks?
No.
Any other questions? I'll go ahead and call the roll. Vote. Supervisor Flaherty?
Yes.
Supervisor Guy? Oh. Mr. Guy, vote. You're on mute.
He's on the phone.
Oh, okay. Well, I didn't see that.
Thumbs up, thumbs down.
Okay. Supervisor Banks?
Yes.
Supervisor Feinberg?
yes,
Okay. Supervisor Tinkle?
Yes.
Maybe ask Mr. Guy if he can wave his hand,
Up or down?
thumbs up or down. Yeah.
No, he's on the phone. It might be, I know he's been having some,
We can treat him as being out of the meeting for a moment.
Okay, well, that motion is going to carry 4-0 with Mr. Guy out of the meeting for a moment.
May I, excuse me, Mrs. Feinberg, may I ask Brian some questions, please?
Go ahead.
Thank you. Okay. First of all, I want to thank you for those few chairs that you put around the pool.
You're welcome.
And I asked if you could get an update from the county.
I did. I spoke to the county lady today. Very nice lady. I found out their hours, and there's twofold reasons why. They originally did their hours from 9 to 4 due to COVID, Tuesday through Saturday. I asked her today, do you plan on implementing that for how long? She's, well, unfortunately, due to county furloughed some people, they still have her lifeguards and made them counselors. So her hours won't increase whether they find a cure tomorrow because she don't have the manpower.
Okay.
Now, we did check around with different pools that are like us, Fort Myers Beach, Fleshman, there's one in the Cape. All the hours are ranging 10 to 5, 9 to 4. I was going to bring this up at the July 2nd board meeting. My suggestion would be 7 days a week. You either implement a 9 to 5, or we're looking at an 8 to 6, pretty much pool hours. I mean, they still got the social distancing, but would pick it up 7 days a week.
And we would open it up so that it's not just for laps and.
That's up to you guys. The county's not doing that. They still got exercise. Where the kids want to come up there and fly and dive sticks in the deep end, she says, but ours is still exercise only. But what they've been doing, 25 to 50% max at the pool.
That's what I was wondering, if we could limit the number of people that went in the pool to
You
use it.
can. You can pass. We'd be glad to oblige by it. I mean, I know the pool folks. The other thing was the hours. Like I say, if we go beyond an 8 to 6, then I have to hire another body. Because I'm limited right now. I have 2 part-timers and 1 full-time person. That'll give me 90 hours.
At least 8 to 6 is opening it a little bit more.
Correct.
And maybe next, Mrs. Feinberg, if it's with your permission, maybe at the next board meeting on the agenda could be if we could limit the number of people that goes in the pool. And that way we would have the social distancing and they still would.
That was being brought up. I have it actually on the next agenda item for the next
Okay,
meeting. But we were looking at today, and I talked to the Tim, our new supervisor at the pool, and we looked around. He says most of them are either doing 9 to 5 or some are doing 10 to 5. But we were thinking either we do it 8 to 5, 7 days a week, or 8 to 6, wherever you want. But we can limit the capacity on the pool to keep the social distancing. We have put chairs out. We can make them 6 feet apart.
Only because it's getting warmer and it's one way of cooling down.
And your COVID cases are going up, unfortunately.
Yeah. Let him bring a proposal back for us to consider.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
But
She said bring a proposal back. Thank you.
we'll do.
Thank you.
And if I may,
Hey,
let me say from staff.
One thing to that, please. I think we keep track, at least we used to, of traffic at the pool. Are we still doing that?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, so it might be to our advantage to look and see volume and time of day for, let's say, the past 12 months. Probably more importantly, last year at this time, to see when our peak traffic is. And that might help influence, or at least help us tailor our conversation around when the pool is being used the most, because that could influence our scheduling.
What we've seen so far is most time in the morning, you have your lap swimmers. Then middle of the day, you're getting residents coming up with their families, small kids and stuff like that. With the rainstorms in every afternoon by 3 o'clock, you might get 1 or 2 come back and do some laps before the pool closes. But typically your crowd right now is between the 9 and 1 o'clock window. And that's mainly the lap swimmers and people just coming up with their kids. But since we're closed Saturday and Sunday, the weekends we haven't had open, so.
And I'm thinking too that once the weather gets warmer, they might want to come up in the afternoon. Because there is, and that's what I'm thinking. Thank you.
Chris, do we need to do 5C?
Yes, I have that item and it should just take a moment. It's the last action item that we have. And Basically, we were looking at going into Hampton Park and doing some thinning of the littorals that are far in excess of the development order requirement. In most cases, it's 8 to 10 feet. We were looking at going into all the lakes and trimming them back to a width of 12 feet. We didn't want to go right in there and do what I'd call a crew cut at one time, and it greatly increased the cost when you increase that volume. We got 2 bids, one from Aquagenics at $79,800, one from Matt Tower at $64,008. And our recommendation is to go with Matt Tower in that amount to spray and trim the littorals to a width of 12 feet and then remove the resulting dead vegetation in all the lakes of Hampton Park. And I also wanted to make the board aware, due to complaints we've gotten on weeds on the rock, that we were going to issue a purchase order to Aquagenics from a quote they had where they were the low quote to go in for the next 4 to 5 months, a couple times a month, and spray for weeds on the rock. And what our intent is just to get them working out there, get those weeds under control. And when the board adopts the new pond standards, we will be developing a new set of bid specifications to reflect those standards, and we'll be putting the entire aquatic maintenance budget out to bid again. That will include anything new as far as littorals according to the development order, spraying for weeds, or any other items that come up during the pond standards. And this month, the funding for this would come out of the budget line item for littoral maintenance in excess of DO, which was funded at $125,000. And we'll be spending approximately $75,000 of that money on these 2 initiatives.
Who's the purchase order to for the spraying?
For the spraying, it'll be Aquagenics. They were the low bid on the spraying.
Have they already started this work? I was playing golf yesterday and I saw them spraying.
No, they haven't started this. We haven't given a purchase order. They might just be out on their own doing some of it where they see it really bad. But I did have a meeting staff did with George to talk about it. He said they had been doing some of it as a courtesy, but it was not included in their contract. And as we did more ponds and put more rock out, I think he's just being nice.
Well, he's also got a requirement, or had a requirement in the past contracts, that he was supposed to take care of the banks to begin with.
Well,
So I don't understand, if we take out 10,000, 15,000 lineal feet of banks, that's 10,000, 15,000 feet of banks he didn't have to do.
Well,
So I don't understand, we got a credit coming from half this way.
And rocks are part of the, there's still the maintenance. I don't see the difference between them and something else, so.
Well, the difference is previously, before the rock was there, people had their yards there and their landscaping companies took care of their rear yards. And George, when his interpretation of taking care of the pond bank was when the water elevation dropped between that yard and what you get now is that mud ring, if you want to call it that they were removing exotics and spraying weeds in there, not spraying 20 feet of lake maintenance.
So he was saying it was limited.
Correct, just for that ring.
I would like to table that part of this until we see the Aquagenics contract.
Well, sure, and I reviewed that contract and brought George in, and he's the one that signed it, and he's the one that told me it was not part of his contract, and that he had been doing some of that work just as a courtesy. But
have you looked at it and verified that yourself?
I'm in agreement with him. I think it really goes to the bottom of control elevation, the bottom, and then when the water drops below, that was the part he was taking care of.
If that's the case, I wouldn't want to defer it, because this work needs to be done, because it's getting bad.
We're only going to defer it for 2 weeks, so.
I think, I'm just going to hop in here real quick. I think that the consideration of this should be considered after we hear the littoral, the ponds maintenance workshop. I think this is something that we should hear what the ponds group came up with before we consider a maintenance contract on anything.
I agree.
Weeds is a ponds issue, on the ponds bank issue. It's not an issue.
And part of that too is, and I'll admit, the contract language with Aquagenics is somewhat nebulous and a little weak, where I couldn't go in and stake it to George and say, look, it really is open to interpretation. So that's one thing that we would do in the next set of pond standard documents is tighten that definition up of what pond bank maintenance is.
Are both of the bids for aquagenics and Met Tower, was there a specification that they both did on the same work?
That's right. And Matt Tower was lower on the thinning of littorals and aquagenics is lower on the spraying. And again, we were only going to issue this for about $8,500 for 4 to 5 months. We had time to reissue the standards and also the specifications for a rebid.
Madam Chairman,
Yes.
move to table this item until July 16th.
I'll
I
second.
second that.
Oh,
Okay, we have a motion to table and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, Supervisor Flaherty?
yes.
Supervisor Guy?
Yes.
Supervisor Banks?
Yes.
Supervisor Feinberg?
Yes.
Supervisor Tinkle?
Yeah.
Okay, the motion to table the amendment to the 16th meeting passes 4-1. And that is the end of the action item for today.
Okay, that brings us to supervisor comments. And I'm going to start. I know I don't usually start, so if everybody will just bear with me, I just want to make some comments. And the first thing that I'd like to let everybody know is that I have withdrawn my name as a candidate for seat 1. So I just want to say that I have been very proud to have served on this Board of Supervisors for as long as I have. I have been very proud to represent all of the residents of Gateway and Pelican Preserve. But I know I'm leaving seat 1 and Gateway in excellent hands. Flavia Walsh was my opponent, and she's going to do an excellent job. And I just want to say that I congratulate Supervisor-elect Flavia Walsh. And thank you. That was my comment.
Congratulations to both of you.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you, Mark.
Okay, who's next? Supervisor Flaherty, comments?
Yes. Do you know when you're gonna open up the office? I mean, you're gonna open it up like for appointments?
We could, we're just following the lead of Lee County, and we met with them, on the phone this past week and talked to them, and they have not opened their office. They do have a drive-through that we don't have, but right now everything online, or if people want to drop things off, we aren't having any issues with face-to-face contact with customers. We're leaving things at the door and they're dropping things off at the door.
Now, Lee County has to use it down there and make appointments. I've been down there for.
Or maybe other county business, not the utilities office.
I'm just saying, yeah. And I mean, the banks and the lobbies, I'm just thinking that it could be open and put a sign maybe for appointments only. If anybody had any questions, they could call and make an appointment and they can meet in here. There's enough room. It's a suggestion. Okay, apartments, have we heard anything update about those apartments?
No movement.
Okay, now I have a problem with Mainscape. Okay? Okay, they're not doing any edging along Gateway, Griffin Drive, and I know I've talked to Glenn, well, they do one side and then the other side, but it's been over a month. Okay, they're not doing any weeding in the medians. It's just like, okay, let's not do anything. All right, so I'm wondering, I know they get paid on a monthly basis. If we could hold back some of that money and have somebody go around and make sure they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, being accountable for what they're supposed to be accountable for. I'm just asking.
Well, I'll write it down and we'll ask Freddie and get together and meet with him and see what's going on with them.
Okay, and then I have.
They have contract specifications they're supposed to meet, and the timeframes are all in there. So how many
And they're
times
not
they're
meeting
supposed to
them.
be
I
out there.
know. And then I have some information here about putting some irrigation in front of Magnolia Lakes, but I'm gonna hold this off until we're all together as a unit so I can pass it out. So that was all my comments, Mrs. Feinberg.
Thank you, Mrs. Flaherty. Mr. Guy,
I have none, thank you.
Mr. Banks,
I have none.
Mr. Tinkle.
Yes, we had originally planned to have Commissioner Pendergrass today's meeting, but he had to cancel out because of a death at one of the staff members' family. Did he give you any idea, Chris, as a reschedule? Is he looking at the second?
I sent a response back and gave him the dates for the next two meetings and told him at his convenience. So I'll work with his appointment staff, but I think he wants to get in here as quickly as possible.
I think so too. Where are we at, or where are they at, or where are we both at relative to the proceeding of work on Griffin Drive roundabout? Have we done any design work yet on utility relocation?
No, sir. We had a contract come up with Tetra Tech to get started on that. It was tabled until the board made a decision to move forward. And I assume you want to hear from the commissioner and see which route they
We
want
haven't
to go.
incurred any costs there.
But they have 60% design plans done on their end, and we've supplied them all the utility drawings on our end. And we also were working with them. They were doing some subsurface excavation, and we added a few points to make sure they knew exactly where our main lines were.
Did we get a copy of any cost analysis? This is Cecil, and I guess it got back to me. Did we ever get a copy of their cost analysis? Because if you recall, one of the big things they were toting on this was that the long-term cost-effective analysis of this was just hands down in favor of roundabout.
I don't have that. I can get it. And I know one thing that our engineer's estimate on the construction costs for relocation of utilities was about $420,000. The bid came back at $732,000, and their engineers were surprised because it wasn't just on the utility side; it was on the paving side that was much higher than their estimate. And they're pointing a lot of fingers at the extensive maintenance of traffic costs to keep that intersection open. That really added a lot to that cost for both the utilities.
You know where I'm going.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Have they redone their cost-effective analysis of the Commerce Lakes deal that a stoplight isn't now cheaper than a roundabout?
Well, not that I'm aware of, but the only consideration I know they were looking at recently, and I'll get those numbers, is just shutting the intersection down for 3 months while it was under construction. So it would be a huge inconvenience to the residents, but it would save a lot of money on the construction.
The school board and the fire department, let them.
But that's just one of the things that came on the table, but I'll get the numbers and see if they revised it.
Yeah, because that's what my reason is that when you take a $1 million cost at today's present work value and haven't included that in a 20-year cost effective analysis, you blow it. I mean, you flat blow it. That's a big expense not to include in the cost analysis, unless you're using 1% for calculating your net present worth. I mean, something on this whole thing is fishy, but what'd be nice to have is that information before Cecil and staff get here to go over that.
I'll make the request tomorrow, and as we've stated before, this is the first roundabout they've done in the county, so.
Well, that's another question is that this firm that's doing the design, I'd like to know a little bit more about them. That's all I had.
Okay.
I had one other question that I wanted to ask, and that was about the employee survey that we had sent out, and I think we decided to pull that back and set it up in a different forum. Have we gone forward with that at all?
Yeah, I'm trying to wrap that up. I really wanted to have it done by last week, and just haven't been able to complete everything. So I've dedicated some time over the weekend to wrap that up, and it should be able to be delivered early next week.
Okay, that was the only other thing I had.
And I apologize for the delay. Past has been a little bit of an issue for me lately.
That's okay. If nobody has anything else, I will call this meeting adjourned at 5:10.
Thank you.
See, stop recording.